So good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's Storyteller webinar. Hi, Scott. How you doing, mate?
I'm very well, thank you, mate. How are you?
I'm good. Like I said, we've been chatting off camera, made sure that neither of us has melted. You can see that I haven't melted. I know that you're melting, so we're not sharing your webcam in case they think there's something scary
It's
on.
a very hot and sweaty Essex tonight, mate. I won't lie.
It is. I'm hoping that all of you are joining us. Make sure you're nice and cool. I have the fan behind me in case I need it. Make sure you've got a nice cold drink because we've got a great hour ahead of you tonight on this as well. Scott, just before we get going, and for those people that might not be aware of you, even though they should be, quite frankly, let's a little bit about you and how we got you into how you got into the wedding business, and obviously where you're at with the likes of Fuji and Fundy today, mate.
To be honest, it was a complete accident. I wanted to photograph cricket, and that's what I wanted to do 15 years ago. And then I was working at a pro lab, and then a guy that worked for us started to come back off of cruise ships, told me all the stories, and I thought, you know what, I quite fancy that. So I learned my trade on cruise ships, came back, started working as a second shooter for a local photographer. Realised quite quickly that I wasn't too bad at doing it, and then set the company up in 2006, and that is a very short synopsis of what we've been doing for the last 14, 15 years.
I think we were lucky. When did we first meet? About 2 years ago now, I suppose, isn't it?
About 2 years ago, yeah, but it was amazing. Though since then, my involvement with Fundy's been amazing. I've been on board with Fujifilm as one of their brand ambassadors for the last 18 months, and that's been incredible as well. So I'm running a lot of things, product testing and workshops for them as well. It's been an amazing ride the last 4 years since I started doing well at SWPP in the print comp. That's when it's really started to take off. So enter prints, guys. You never know where it's going to take you.
Well, I know that's part of. We're going to talk about it tonight, and I've noticed, and I was pleased when you gave me a preview of the presentation that I think you have shot probably my favourite wedding image of all time. I think you know which one I'm on about, but I'm not going to say anything more because I know it's in your presentation. So
It is.
we'll talk about it then. Right, let's give you the screen, mate. So it's I'm making you the presenter. It should tell you to show your screen, and then I'll make sure that we're seeing the right one. Let you know where we're at.
Let's go for that one, I think. Yes, there we go. How about that? Perfect.
Yeah, seeing it nice and clear. Right, so I'm going to get rid of my mugshot. Guys, just as a reminder, I'm quiet instead of the mute my webcam. My webcam's gone. Right, questions for Scott or myself to do with Fundy, please pop them through the question panel. I'll ask them where appropriate. Scott, mate, it is all yours.
Thanks, guys. Again, thank you for taking time out on a very warm Wednesday evening to come listen to me ramble on about fine art wedding portraiture. Thanks to Jay and obviously Mark for giving me the opportunity, and obviously Fundy Software for their constant support. You guys are rocking it at the minute. So this is just a little, 45 minutes on how I take wedding pictures. Really, it all started very differently. Back in 2004 was when I started working for somebody else. And I realised I wanted to kind of, break away from the norm. Really, I wanted to break away and just be different. I didn't want to be the standard photographer that just turns up, does the images, and before you know it, you're just kind of stuck in a rut. And I was very early on. I wanted to be different. I wanted to be the best. I'm very competitive. I enter competitions an awful lot, and I wanted to be the best. And I knew just shooting what I was shooting wasn't going to get me there. I was shooting stuff like this. You can see this is awful. Let's be honest, absolutely dreadful. Hopefully, no one signs out the webinar between now and now they've seen this. But this was my first ever wedding. I think it's very, very important to throw back and appreciate where you've come from. And those of you that have been shooting weddings for a few years now, I really, really urge you to take a look at your first weddings and just realize, even if you don't kind of not that aware of it, if you look back at the weddings, if you've been photographing for even 2 or 3 years, you will notice a style change. And you'll notice that if you keep doing webinars and investing in yourself for training, you will get better. And as I said, this was my first ever wedding for the Edge photography. So, we've got awful lighting, posing. I've got a diffuse glow in there. It's just rubbish. I used to use flash for everything. I don't even know what kind of crop that was, but that's a full came out of camera like that. So yeah, this is me, and I'm not afraid to show it. It's not even sharp. Look, those of you that have got a good monitor, you can see that this image is not even sharp, and I was knocking this out for client work, and they loved it. Back then, it was getting me working. It was brilliant. that I was very aware that I was getting colour pop. Who remembers colour pop? This is amazing. So yeah, this is something that obviously I don't do too much of anymore, if at all. Even if I'm asked to do colour pop, I will advise against it, because I think it would seriously date the wedding album or coverage. So I don't do it anymore. But back in 2005 and 6, this was all the rage. And rugby scrums. I know Jay's a big Welshman and appreciates a rugby scrum, and this is what I used to do for shots. So yeah, go figure. So the reason why I wanted to change is because in 2000, well, especially now in 2019, everyone that owns a good mobile phone or even an iPad, dare I say it, calls themselves a photographer, and we owe it to photography to stand up and be counted. I think we need to step away from the shots that I was taking there. You know, there was someone when I used to work at Jessop's many moons ago that bought an, in quote, a professional camera, and because she had a professional camera, she shot a wedding, and she thought she could do it because she had the right camera. She didn't have a clue what she was doing. Shot the whole thing with a flash at 1,000th of a second. Now, those of you that know anything about flash photography realizes that it will not sync at that speed, and she was shooting on film and she ruined the entire wedding. But because she had a professional camera, she thought she could do it. So we really need to invest in ourselves, guys, and give ourselves training to make sure that we're giving our clients the very best, so we can stand head and shoulders above the rest of the industry. I also, you know, I value photography a great deal. This is not just a job for me. This is the passion. I did a recent podcast, and I said that they said about wedding photography. So, oh, you're a wedding photographer. I said, well, I guess I'm a photographer that shoots weddings. I like to photograph many things. You know, I'll shoot architecture, street, landscapes. You name it, I'll try. I've done corporate. So, but I value the craft of wedding photography, and I really appreciate the fact that a lot of us that are shooting weddings week in, week out, it's very difficult to try and get this fine art portraiture in the short amount of time that we do have on the wedding day itself. But you know, I valued myself, I valued my art form, and I wanted to be different, and I wanted to step away from this kind of work here. I was, you know, this used to make me money, guys, you know, and again, you know, without this type of shot, I wouldn't be where I am now, believe it or not, because it started me on the journey to where I am now. No, very lucky to be talking to you guys. So how do I do it on a wedding day? What do I look for on a wedding day? I have four things that I'm looking for, and my brain doesn't switch off at all. So these are the four things that I'm looking for every time before I hit the shutter. I'm looking for light, I'm looking for location, I'm looking for concept, and overall, I'm looking to nail the pose. Because without these 4 steps in photography, then there's no point. And you get these things out of order, and that's when you're going to start really noticing that your photography is not quite fitting. If you're going for a pose and you're got the light wrong, or the pose doesn't match the location or the concept of the image, it's all out of kilter. I cannot stress enough, guys, look for light first. Whether you're looking for natural light or you're creating your own light with off-camera flash. I use rotor lights, I have Neos, so I'm crafting light that way around, but I'm always looking for light. And further on down in the presentation, you'll see some befores and afters of what I've been up to in the last sort of year, 18 months. So you can really kind of see that my light is my driving force. So light, location, concept, pose. If you haven't written those down, guys, please write those down. And before you hit, if you've got weddings this weekend, think about those 4 steps there. So there are different types of light, obviously, different types of light that we can use, different types of light that I like to use. So we have direct light, side light, backlight, reflected, and artificial. They're the main 5 sources of light that I actually use a lot on the wedding day. I would say number 1 and number 2, direct and side light, are my most common lights that I'm shooting with. Backlight every now and again, reflected light depends on the situation, and artificial light, that would be when I'm in during the first dance, or I am in a dark venue. We have very big castles here in Essex with very small windows, so often I'm putting the lights up just to give myself a little bit of a helping hand. So that's when that comes in. But this time, I know today, perfect example, very warm, very sunny. Direct light can be difficult to master. People look up and think, oh my God, it's a clear blue sky. What are we going to do? Guys, we pose for it. Clear blue skies, bright sunny skies, nice strong light, I believe should be a nice powerful pose. It should be, you know, turning the body away from the light, like most things, turning the face back in. Again, we've got the light, we've got the location. This is down on the headland, down in Cornwall. Very nice place. to photograph. And then we've got the concept. You know, she's a bride. She's a very strong, independent woman. So I put her in a very strong, independent in pose. And then obviously we've crafted everything to match, so it's all in sync. So we've got the light, location, concept, and pose, and it all sits there quite nicely. Looking back, I probably could have put a bit more to the left, so she's looking into the image a little bit more rather than looking out of it. But you know, this was a couple of years ago now. So again, even for me now, I'm still learning the craft, guys. You know, the day that you say I've mastered photography, I know everything about it, it's the day you should sell your cameras. I'm a great believer in every day is a school day, and we are. You know, I'm still learning. Joe Guionis is still learning. All the photographers anywhere in the world are still learning the craft. Again, nice strong light, nice strong pose. Again, just kind of got them stood up on a bench to cut the feet off. But again, this is a little bit backlit as well, maybe. But again, the Fujifilm cameras that I'm using have got very good dynamic range, so I can really draw out the shadows in any type of shot that I'm trying to create. So again, light, location, concept, pose. I'm selling spreads in my wedding albums. This was a spread in the wedding album, so this was exactly how the spread looked. So again, spreads make me money. I always charge extra for spreads. So if you're not selling albums, guys, start selling albums, start selling spreads. You'll make a ton more money that way. It's an amazing way to help increase your revenue moving forwards. Side light is my absolute favorite light to work with. My style of photography, those of you who've seen my work on Instagram or Facebook or been to see me talk before, I like to craft light, and it's a very soft light. It's a very easy way of photographing for me. Now, brides spend a fortune on their wedding dress, and they want to show off the details, no matter how small, but they want to be showing that off. And I believe side light is a really good way of doing that. So here, this is in a bar, in the venue. Again, I have no problem, guys, of turfing people out of a room or moving furniture or taking things off the wall. If the light is right, then that's where we're going to be photographing. It's going to be nice and simple, nice and straightforward. So we have one window source here on the left-hand side. Again, we've got a soft light, so a very, very soft, elegant pose. So my pose is matching my light and the location and the concept. So it's an open shot from here. And again, soft pose, body turning away, face looking back in, and you can pick up on the detail on the top of the dress there. And that's what the bride wanted. She spent a fortune on the wedding dress, so we did a very good job, I think, of showing all that off. And again, if the light's good, please don't be afraid. No, politely, don't just go in and say, right, everyone out. Just politely ask people just to say, look, guys, I've got an idea. Can I just please have this corner of the room? Or can I just please, take the furniture? There's nothing more funny than in a bride's house in the morning to walk into a front room and you see the pocket of light right where the sofa is and say, Mum, I'm really sorry, I'm going to pull that sofa out. And the look of horror when she sees all the dust bunnies underneath the sofa is hilarious. So yeah, so the reason I do that, the first thing I do in going to any room is I generally turn all the lights off, which obviously really upsets the makeup artist. But what I'm looking for is pockets of light like we have here. So go into the room, guys, and just turn the light off and just see where this natural light is coming from. Again here, this is a side light. This is actually lit by two windows. The main source obviously on the right-hand side here with a little bit of the kick coming from the left. And again, it's a soft light, soft pose. This was a shot for the hairdresser. This was actually in my fellowship panel a couple of years ago. Well, I say a few years ago now, but it's a really good demonstration of how we've used just two windows to make it look like we've got a studio. And it's just light sources, guys. It's exposing for the highlights and again, using the shadows and lifting out in Photoshop or Lightroom and creating a very, very soft pose for very, very soft light. It's a beautiful way to photograph. Again, detail in the back of the dress. I don't know how good your screens are, guys, but I can assure you there is detail in the back of the head. Even that dark spot there is detail there. And this is a great shot for a portfolio shot for the hairdresser. Again, it's really, really good and important to get in with other suppliers, especially in this day and age of social media. They'll tag you, you tag them. Everyone's happy, everyone's on to a winner. And it's that way that we're really going to help build yourself and build your brand. A kitchen. I can tell you that the smell of bacon sandwiches taken during this shot was amazing. So again, the best light for this shot was in the kitchen. They lived in a very nice house, but obviously new houses here in Essex aren't that big. There's lots of little rooms. So there was a lot going on in the living room. So I turned and I saw this light coming in the kitchen. So the breakfast bar is just to the right-hand side. So what I did, again, a soft pose for soft light, where I position the bride there, it's framed nicely with the frames there on the wall, and it's just kind of leading your eye into the bride. Again, a nice soft pose, delicate. I cannot stress enough on the wedding day. Again, brides love their dresses, and for a lot of the brides that we're photographing, they love the back of the dress. It's really, really important to photograph the back of the dress because it's often overlooked because of the veils there, and everyone's looking at the front, and the detail, the lacing, the beading, you name it. But the back of the dress is a really, really important shot. So I can stress, you really should try and get that involved as well. So backlight, again, this is a really good way of putting texture and putting layers into the images that we're taking. Again, I generally expose for shadows here. So what happens when you expose for shadows is you get this layering of light. The light will just wrap around. So I've exposed for the bride's face here. Obviously, it's a cluttered room, busyness of a wedding day, but I actually quite like it. It tells a story. Nothing is perfect at this point on the wedding day. This is just a generic grab shot of a bride getting ready. And I wanted to include the fan, the veil, the bag on the back, all the stuff on the bed, because it's, again, we're storytellers, guys. This is part of the story. I can't say to the bride, right, okay, just stop there a minute while I clean the bed. This is going to take 4 or 5 minutes to clean the bed. The dress will be done at that point. We're already running late, so just get the shot, tell the story. But as you can see here, the one source of light here is from the back, and we have 1 layer and 2 layers. So the bridesmaid is 1 layer, the bride is 2 layers. You can see the light just wraps around. It's absolutely gorgeous. So exposed for the shadows at this point, guys. It's really, really important to get the shadow detail perfect. Another shot. This is in Italy. Again, exposing for the shadows, which is walking out to get a taxi. I love the depth and layers of this image as well. It's really just looking like she's walking into, I don't know, heaven maybe, or somewhere. It's just a beautiful, beautiful shot. And because I've exposed for the shadows, what you can't see is the family of 5 waiting for a taxi just in front of her. Because if I'd exposed for the highlight, you'd have seen all of that in the front. So again, it's a really good way of masking things and using Photoshop. I could have brought all that white out and just had her standing there by herself, but I like the tunnel effect. I like the back of the dress shot. And so again, it's a nice storytelling image, guys. Backlight, and this is when we start using artificial lights. This is kind of two types of light source in one. So obviously DJs spend a lot of money, sometimes many thousands of pounds on their disco lights. So I always go and speak to DJs and say, how are you going to light the first dance? Because 1, I'm lazy. I don't really want to get my lights out from the back of the car if I don't have to. And 2, their lights are generally better than mine anyway. So a quick 5-minute conversation with the DJ. We just turn all the other lights off on the booth, on the totes at the back. You just had 2 spotlights on the dance floor. We worked out roughly how tall the bride and groom were by using myself as a dummy and making sure the bride and groom stand in the center of the dance floor. And then we're still using artificial light and backlight. So again, but this time I've exposed for the highlights because I wanted to create that little bit of a depth within the image as well. So I wanted to create a bit more of a silhouette, but not too much of a silhouette where it's just going to get blocky. I wanted to, again, see the drum set in the background, see the DJs in the background, see the lights in the background. So again, we're just trying to layer the image. So this is where I will expose for highlights. It's a lovely first dance picture, and I think, again, it's another spread image, guys. Again, self-spreads, it's a really good way of making some money, and Fundy is a really good tool of doing that and getting a lot of upsells on your wedding album. So we go into artificial light. The artificial lights that I use, I have a low ID light, which is a tungsten balance light, which comes with a battery that weighs the size of weighs as much as a car. It's really heavy to carry. I have an ice light, which I use every now and again. Very recently, TPS, I bought a Photix little M180 light, which I use a lot now for prep and first dances. They're brilliant. Again, you can change the white balance there, go from full daylight to tungsten really, really quickly. And I've got the Neo ones, Rosa lights, they're fantastic. This is the shot we used with the low light. Again, we used manual white balance here because tungsten light is obviously very orange. So I've just used a manual white balance, and at this point of the day, turn the entire sky this gorgeous color. That is pretty much off camera. If you want to see the raw file, I'm more than happy to show it. You will see my very good friend Lee Haverall just off to the right, who was holding the light for me, which we've obviously photoshopped out. But generally, this is how it came off camera, guys. Again, I can't stress enough to get things right as much as you can in camera. 1, it gives you less editing time to do when you're back in the office. And 2, with less editing time, on a day like today, you can spend more time down the pub with your friends. And that's all we're here for, guys. You know, we want to try and make this job as easy as possible. And if you can get things right in camera, then by all means do that. Again, using the same light here. Again, we just matched the temperature now. I've kept it on a tungsten, on a auto white balance from the camera, and we've just matched the white balance in with the light coming off the lull, in with the scenery at the background to get this nice shot of the Cliffs Pavilion. This is, again, much as before, this is the combination of disco lights and my lull light. So you can see that the two lights on the right-hand side there, that doesn't have any impact at all on this image, but the source of light we have here is just to the bride's right, and that is actually my assistant, Karen. She's holding the lull ID light, and I'm shooting into that light. I want the silhouette, I want the detail of the veil, I want to see a little subtle bit of dress and a bit of their expression, a bit of, you can tell they're happy. There's a room of 140 people watching this first dance, but I've used a 56mm lens. I've shot it at 1.2, which is 85mm equivalent in full frame, and I've just cut every single person out. I've just wanted to show the bride and groom at the most intimate moment in front of 140 people, and by exposing it right, by using the camera right, by using the depth of field correctly, I think we've achieved that quite nicely. Off-camera flash, I don't use a lot of off-camera flash, but I was very fortunate last year to work for Fujifilm, and we had the run-of-the-mill with the Pro Photo flash gear. I had all of it, literally all of it, that I could have used, and never done it before. So I thought, well, no pressure, we'll have a little test and see what we can do with off-camera flash. And we did this kind of shots with it. So basically what we did here, we had a B1 behind the door to the right, an A1 just behind the door to the left, just giving the dress a little bit of a kick. So we made it look like there was a window light coming in from there, guys. I can assure you this was a crystally dark, it's not even making any sense, a wonderfully dark chapel in the center of a building in Lisbon. There was not one window source here, but we've made it look like natural daylight from there. And again, just a little bit of fill at the front here, in the front of the archway there, just to give a little bit of context there. So again, off-camera flash can be done very beautifully. I do not do it on a wedding day, quite simply. I haven't got the skill set to do it as well as someone like Chris Chambers, who I believe is an absolute master of camera flash. I can't do it as well as him. I get frustrated, therefore I just don't do it. I much prefer using LEDs, but I thought I'd give it a try. Again, same setup, just with the groom here. And it's just, again, it's a nice way of just kind of exposing for everything. You can see a little fill in the archway, but the focus, you're drawn straight into where the groom is from there. So again, off-camera flash done well can be done beautifully. I just don't have the skill set to do it on a wedding day. Reflected light, those of you who don't have reflectors, again, I urge you to get a reflector. You can get some tri-grips, you can get some 6-foot reflectors. There are some really, really good ways of adding light to an image. This is one of my favorite shots using a reflector. This is a shot that came second at SWP Print Comp a couple of years ago. We have two light sources here. From the right, off a building, you can see the very high key light on his left-hand side, and we used a reflector. Now, I didn't have my reflector with me on that day, but what I did have was a bride with a big white wedding dress, which was as good as a reflector. So I got her to stand just out of shot, and that was enough just to kick some light into his right-hand side, our left, just to give me help with that exposure, and it came out quite well. So guys, if you don't have a reflector and you want to shoot the groom alone, just use the bride. She's a big reflector, big white dress, get her to stand there, use that. I've done it a few times now. Now, obviously you have to word it in a certain way, but certainly you don't want to be saying, hey, just, stand there, you're big enough to be a reflector. Definitely don't say that. Just say, would you mind just coming a little bit closer? And then that way she's gonna help out without even knowing it. This was used with reflectors. This was a beautiful venue in Suffolk. 2 reflectors here. Again, I've exposed for the highlights, not to lose the highlights in the window. So I've had to, use my reflectors to lift some light into the couple there. 2 reflectors just out of shot, just bouncing some light back in. And again, it's created this very, very nice exposure on the couple there. And this is my first big award winner at SWPP in 2014. It's won the wedding classical category at their annual print comp in London. So it was definitely worth a setup and definitely worth doing. So there's no excuses, guys. There's no excuses anymore. If you kind of apply what I've kind of gone through there to your business and to the way you're shooting, and just think about it: light, location, concept, and pose, and really just trying to think about it from a different point of view without being patronizing. Last thing I want to do is sit here and patronize you, but just think alike differently. Don't think I can't put a bride there, I can't do this, I can't do that. Just think about it differently. Before we go on, Joe, any questions coming in, mate? Anything coming through so far?
We definitely have questions for you, pal. Yeah, I didn't want to break your flow.
That's all right.
Right, let's. They're not in any particular order, mate. So I'll just go from the top to bottom. Um, Group shots. I tend to. Oh, hang on a minute. I've gone too far because this is about spreads as well. Okay, so you talked a lot about spreads. Let's just be clear because a few people asked. You mean like a double page spread in an album, mate? Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, 2 pages, 1 spread.
Brilliant, because this will tie into the question that comes in next, because a few people asked that. So I've answered it in the question panel, but I thought we'd address it with everybody. So I often find that when I'm doing the family groups, I miss out on that double page spread. Top tips for remembering to do it. Does that make sense?
On what for group shots, I
Well,
guess. Yeah,
yeah.
just try and I always try and shoot between 8 and 12 group shots, which is enough for a spread generally. I would generally do immediate families and stick 8 on a spread, and I'll do all the bridal party, and I'll do all the boys and all the girls. That's another spread. There's 2 spreads there that you can generally try and do. I'm not a fan of overloading spreads. Generally, 8 is the maximum I will put on a spread, even for group shots, because you don't want the spread to look too busy, and also it's a way of earning extra revenue moving forward. So yeah, just trying to think of immediate family, bridal party, all the families on one spread, and then a bridal party on a separate spread. That way, you should earn some more revenue that way.
That's quite interesting, really, because obviously the one thing that we've always taught in the past is that even if you're just looking for that one shot, it's almost the opposite of what you said. But what I quite like about what you said is that the one thing that we would have remembered maybe is that massive everybody shot, where you've gone up and you've gone to the roof of the hotel and you're shooting down.
Yeah.
That's an obvious one to me, but then you've just nailed it. If you think of them all, the key groups as spreads, and in your charging and your costing, you're never going to forget to do them. Which
No.
I think is a great way there. So I like that a lot as well. So brilliant. So there's some in you. So I was going to chip in with that, but ignore me. Do what Scott says. And, and the other thing, and a bit of a plug for us really as well, is that if you haven't seen them already, but we give away sort of lighting posing apps on the Photographer Academy. So there are wedding ones there. So they were really popular just to have on your phone and for a quick reminder just before you're about to get set up for a session, and when you've got that downtime on the wedding days when you're waiting for things to happen, you can give yourself a quick reminder. Brilliant.
Exactly.
Okay, so obviously, before we got into the different types of light, we talked a lot about, obviously natural light, which is fantastic. We're big fans of it. We know that you've moved over to the Fuji cameras, mate. Do you have desired lenses? Somebody asked, do you have a particular go-to? They seemed quite nice and wide. Are you using one lens or are you using a few variations?
I mean, I shoot completely on prime lenses. I use 2 bodies on the wedding day, and generally the camera on my right has got the longer lenses on. So generally the 35 1.4 or the 56 1.2. And on my left-hand side, it's generally the 16mm 1.4 or the amazingly sharp 8-16 2.8. That is probably one of my favourite lenses that I'm shooting with at the minute. When I moved from DSLR, the 14-24-8 was the one lens I really, really missed, and thankfully Fujifilm bought out an equivalent last November, and I bought it day one. It's so sharp, it's amazing, mate. I can't recommend it enough.
Brilliant, brilliant. So you mentioned about the Rotolight that you've just started using that. Are you finding it quite portable? They are pretty portable, aren't they?
Yeah. I mean, I've got the kit. I've got a suitcase, like a flight case. They come in. I've got 3 light stands. They come with me in the back of the car at every single wedding, and they're really you can wheel them about. They are heavy, but they are very, very portable. They're very, very good to have and very handy in certain situations.
This isn't a question as such. The shot that you showed, the big blue one with the big building and the bride in front of it, and you said you photoshopped it.
Yes.
Was that the Cliffs Pavilion?
No, that's actually the Opera House in Valencia.
Oh, have you shown something tonight from the Cliffs Pavilion?
I have, yeah. That was the couple in the middle of the red seats. Yeah.
Oh, so the comment was the Cliffs Pavilion. Wow, I've never made it look. I've never seen it look so good. So I guess that was a compliment, mate. Excellent.
I was actually told I couldn't go in there, but the door was open, so I went in. Guys, I can always stress, always ask for forgiveness rather than permission.
Yeah. Guerrilla, yeah, we know that guerrilla photography. Just play, well, you haven't heard it here, but you have. Just play dumb and say sorry. Yeah. I love it. Right.
I'm going to crack on it. Go on.
What's that, mate? Sorry.
I said I was going to crack on and get going and set any questions. We'll do them at the end if you want. Is there any more now?
No, we've got some, but I think that they can hang on, to be honest.
Okay. I mean, I've got another, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, so we can do some Q&A at the end. That's perfect.
Go for it, mate. Go for it.
Wicked. All right. So going back, guys, there are no excuses. I did a workshop nearly 2 years ago now, and I was sold it as Greywood Hall, and I thought, oh, what's up there? Pontefract looks good. So I go, no, Essex. We used to have in venues like Gosfield Hall here and Down Hall, which I'm going to do quite a lot out. So I googled Greywood Hall, and this came up. And I thought, fantastic, this is just up my street. It's, look at those windows. It's, you know, obviously Edwardian, Georgian. I'm not obviously not an architect major. I thought this would be perfect. So I drive 4 hours up to Pontefract, and that's what I turned up to. And I can almost hear you kind of going, oh my God, that's exactly what I said. So I re-put in the address for the sat nav, and it said, you are here. And I was like, oh my God, I've got to give a 6-hour talk today on how to shoot, and this is where I'm going to be shooting. So I just didn't panic. I thought, let's go inside. It can't look that bad, guys. It looked that bad. It was just one big room, and that was pretty much what we shot. Forgive the quality of the images there, but I thought about it, and I looked at, and I used my my mantra: light, location, concept, pose. So I found the light, and we posed it. So the first shot we did was this image here. So again, we just used the light source here, nice bit of balance there. I've obviously photoshopped myself out in the mirrors, but again, I just kind of thought that's probably not a bad shot to open the workshop with. This was the second shot we did. So we put a reflector in the window just to kill the highlights, because it was a very bright sunny day, believe it or not, judging by the first picture. So it was very, very hot on the dress and the skin there by her left-hand side. So we just used a diffuser in the window just to kind of calm those highlights down a little bit more. But my favorite shot from the image from the workshop was this shot here. This was used with a low ID light, and again, exposing for the highlights and just really kind of dropping out everything in the background, but using the chandeliers to make it look like that the bride's been lit from that location. So no matter where you go, guys, no matter where you're shooting, no matter how much you're kind of thinking, oh my God, there is nothing I can do here, look for light, think about the pose, think about the location, put the concept in, and I can guarantee you will get successful results. So how do we pick the perfect location? This is some befores and afters now of shots that I've done very recently. So this is down in Devon, down at a place called Motherford's Court. So this is the wedding we shot last year, and I saw this from the car park, and I thought, what on earth is that? I have no idea what that place was, but I knew, looking at the architecture, the symmetry there, and I thought this is going to work. We can make something wonderful work here. So we used some ushers during some downtime. I moved the chairs off either side, and the packet of fertilizer down the bottom corner, and this was the shot we got there, guys. So again, I'm just trying to thinking, what can we get for the most unobvious situation? Now, trust goes a long way. I say to all of my couples, if you trust me, something great's going to happen. You just have to trust me. This was a location shoot that we did for Fujifilm back in November. This is an amazing house that we had the privilege to photograph in. It's a privately owned house where the owner was an interior designer, and the stuff she had in here was just incredible. This staircase, again, I knew I wanted to make something work. The light here was amazing. I thought, how are we going to make something work? And we're going to go upstairs and photograph there. I saw the bride. I thought, actually, stop, don't move, spin round, turn and face the light. And that was the shot that we got from there. And again, we're using the leading lines in from the staircase into the bride. And again, she's just standing there, guys. This is just a soft pose, nice expression, but the whole shot works with the way that the banisters kind of really looks like angel wings. So yes, this is one of my favorite shots I took last year. On the same shoot, this was on the floor, and I thought, we have to get this involved. We cannot not get this involved. And again, what I mentioned before, the Fujifilm 8-16 2.8 lens had just been released. So I thought this is the perfect lens. So I actually stood up on a Pelly case. I had one of the Fujifilm tech specialists holding my belt, and I had to lean over using my live view and the tilt screen. And that's the shot that we got, looking down on the bride there. So obviously we straightened it up in Photoshop. But again, looking back at, there's always something you can do here, guys. This is a car park in Cyprus that we photographed in a couple of years ago. Again, this is one of the only times where location kind of overrode, that's a word, overruled my looking for light first. I saw this and thought, I like to shoot with frames within frames. And I said to the wedding planner, can I photograph here? She said, why would you want to photograph here? It's a car park. I said, look, I'm going to make something magical happen here. And she said, well, no one photographs here. The resort photographers normally go out the back and normally do this and normally do that. So well, that's exactly what I'm not going to do. This couple have paid a lot of money for me to come out and photograph their wedding. I want to give them something quite different on their wedding day rather than just a bog standard photographs. And this is the shot that we got from the car park in from there. So again, just stood back, used leading lines, used framing. Again, this is a wonderful spread on the wedding album. Again, negative space, selling spreads is, again, I'll keep saying it, it's a really good way of making money. And this is up on their wall. It's a really good example of making something work out of that shouldn't work really. This was back in September. This was a skylight that you can't just out of shot here. You can probably see the light source at the top where the wooden beams are. So again, I did a bit of research on the venue and saw this wall. And I thought this is going to work really, really well. To the left-hand side, it just didn't work, but there was enough squares on the wall paneling here to make it work. But there was this massive shard of light just coming through, and I thought that's not going to work. I thought, you know what, let's use the light to my advantage. Let's make it work. So I placed the groom in front of the light, exposed for the highlights, and that's the shot that we ended up with. This is the shot, exactly the same location, guys. Again, exposed to the highlights, and there was enough play in the Fujifilm files to lift the shadows up to make it look fantastic. And again, this actually got a silver distinction over at WPPI back in February, so I was really happy with this shot. It did really, really well. But probably my most well-known shot, and I think this is the one that Jay mentioned earlier, the photograph that won me first place at WPPI back in February, second at SWPP, first at the BIPP Awards, recently just gone, was actually taken on this mound of grass at the back of the venue. And it just looks very nothing, doesn't it? Let's be honest. It's a dirt track around to where they put all the bottles once the wedding's all finished. But it's a really good way of kind of, me shooting low, putting the bride up high, again, exposing for the shadows. So I wanted to drop the sky out a little bit. Thankfully, it was a little cloudy. So this is the location, guys. And that's the shot that we got at that location. As I said, this is the one that has done very well, probably my most awarded image I've ever taken, to be fair. And, again, it was absolutely chucking down with rain at this point. And I said to the bride, I've got an idea. Do you trust me? And she said, yes. So there was myself and one of the bridesmaids. We came out and we held the dress up and we made the shot work. And I said, I think this will be a good, I think you're going to like it. And they have a copy of this, Digilab. TPS had a massive print of this on their stand. They gave me the print as a thank you, and I gave the print to the bride as a thank you for trusting me. So, always explain to your brides that I've got a really good idea. Do you trust me? This is a shot, as I said earlier, this was a test shot from one of the images we did earlier. This the result is obviously that. Now outside there was a staircase. I was having a cup of coffee and I thought that staircase is going to work. Wasn't sure how it was going to work, so I just did a couple of test shots with a couple of my colleagues at Fujifilm, and we just we're just arsing around basically. And I got the crop, knew how I wanted it to work, and then this was the shot we finished up with at the end of it. And it was, again, this is a lovely shot. This is obviously a model shoot. It's not a real wedding day, but this would make a lovely spread in the wedding album. Again, if I was selling it as a wedding book. Now this shot actually won me Natural World Photographer of the Year at SWPP in January. This is actually a test shot, and I called it test shot as well in the competition because it was a test shot. So the shot is the Sycamore Gap up in Northumberland. It's Hadrian's Wall. I always wanted to photograph up here. So again, this is where location overruled light. I wanted to photograph here, and I wanted the right bride and the right groom. This was a post-wedding shoot. This is not on the wedding day, guys. So it's only entered into post-wedding categories if I enter it into competition. Again, it merited at WPPI and did quite well at SWPP. And this was the final shot that we did. So again, just exposing for the highlights. I wanted to really drop out all the shadows in the area from here. Again, the bride and groom looked a little bit lost just standing there, so I gave them some umbrellas. Maybe I've got a thing of umbrellas, who knows? But I gave them some umbrellas to give some context and so you saw them a lot easier. So yeah, it's just exposed for the highlights, and I think it's beautiful. It's definitely for me a bucket list photograph. I've wanted to photograph here since I first saw Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves back in 1991, and I thought that's a cool location, and I finally got to photograph it in October. So massive box tick for me. This is in the Mandalay Bay. This is during one of my super classes at WPPI. This is where everyone had a cigarette. This was the only allocated smoking area in the entire Mandalay Bay outside area. You can see the guy there, a packet of Marlboro on the phone there. I was walking around doing a recce, and I thought, this is going to work. This is a really cool location. So again, I asked the guy to move. I said, look, guy, can I just please ask you to move just to the left-hand side? I've got a really good idea for a photograph. I put the model halfway up the stairs, and that was the shot that we got in from there. And it was just, it's a nice shot. Again, did quite well here at SWPP, not as well at WPPI. But, you know, it's a great shot. She loves it. I love it. Again, make something out of nothing, guys. Don't walk past and say, I can't photograph someone there. If the light's right, you can photograph someone there. And again, this is inside the Mandalay Bay. Again, there was actually a lady breastfeeding on this couch, and I've got to become very good friends with her ever since. Her husband is a very successful photographer in San Diego. Didn't know it at the time. We're good friends. I actually had the privilege to judge with them at WPPI back in February. But I saw this location, saw the light, saw the reflection. Now, my initial idea was to use the reflection on the floor, but we just couldn't get it to work. So I just changed my idea, changed my concept, and got my groom to sit down, move the couch to the left-hand side a little bit. And that was the finished shot there. And that was what we did at WPPI, again, using the frame within a frame, nice pose, is good expression. Again, I didn't want to completely drop out the background, but I thought the groom was just standing out enough so you're not distracted by the palm trees and the hotel in the background. So that's my part of the webinar done as far as that's concerned, guys. You can find me here. This is my Instagram and Facebook. If you want to email me any questions, please feel free to do so. I'm quite friendly, so please don't think I'm not going to answer my emails. I always answer anyone's email as we go from there. But what I'm talking about now is Fundy software and how I apply Fundy software into my workflow. So here, what we have is going to shut that down. Hopefully, Jay, you can still see my screen now.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wicked. So within the Fundy software, we can actually have the ability to use magazines. And magazines I actually use as my brochures. So my lab prints the magazines for me, Graphic Studio. They print all my magazines for me. And I use, again, how I'm talking about selling spreads and thinking about how I'm photographing when I'm hitting the shutter and I'm telling the story, and I'm using different kind of shots there. And again, we're just going to go through it in from here. So nice cover shot. Again, I've thought about on the wedding day, cover shot, logo, frame with images into here, all around here, and a couple of placed perfectly in the center of the frame here. And again, when I'm talking about spreads, this would be a spread here. It's a beautiful wedding we shot back in October. And again, I thought this was a great center page spread. So again, nice negative space. I thought about it, and you can put text in, you can put all your classics in, you can put all you can totally design it, you can drop shadow, if I want to go into here and change the opacity, then I can do that by taking completely out. It's a really good bit of software to be able to play with and make your magazines look absolutely perfect. And again, you can really tell the story of the wedding day. And again, spreads here, spread image there, spread image there. So if you're photographing for spreads, guys, you're going to make a ton more money that way. And I believe that using Fundy software for your albums and magazines is a really good way of increasing your revenue. My goal is always to upsell at least the cost of my albums for the entire year. So technically my albums are free because I'm upselling enough that they're more than paying for my album bill every year at Graphic Studio. So I cannot stress enough, sell spreads, guys. You're going to make a ton more money. Have you got any questions there, Joe?
We do, mate. We do, absolutely.
Brilliant.
So, but what I want to touch on quickly, I know we've just sort of glazed over this magazine maker within Fundy, and we're not going to do we don't need to do a hard sell for Fundy because it speaks for itself, really. But what I loved when they showed me this back at TPS this year, obviously when last time I saw you face to face as well,
yeah,
was the beauty. I don't think what we've touched on enough is the beauty of it as a sales tool. So, you know, we're in this digital age, and two things tonight that have really struck a chord, and it's something that you know that we teach, is the album for a start, the physical product. You know, we've got so lost in this digital age where, you know, the printed media is, you know, we're bringing it back to the forefront, and it should be. But when I saw these magazines, and it was Fundy that showed me the designer, and then they had some printed on their stand, you know, from, I think it was from Graphy, because it was right next to the Graphy Studio Lounge.
That's right, yeah.
Mark and I both went, brilliant. You know, we constantly, with experience, are producing literature and designs and brochures for the Experience Group Holiday, and we will absolutely be doing that for Experience Wedding Groups as well. But as a sales tool, to be able to give that to your customer, that physical product, will stand you above the rest. And you know, you can confess. I know we've touched on it today, but you can knock this up in next to no time. That's the beauty of.
Yeah, I mean, if you want, I can just literally, I can add. And let me just add some quickly onto here. If you can see my screen still, you literally just kind of throw it on, and it's there straight away. It's there, and you can add your text in. And if I want to, you know, double page spread, we throw that one into there. I can still tell the story and go bang, 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 and throw that into there. And then you can go into the actual software and change the layout. If you want that image over there, you change it. That one up there, you change it. This one you want double click. This one you can take out, and it goes to full page. It's as quick as that. And I knocked this out, and I'm not exaggerating, in about an hour and a half.
Yeah.
You know, in the days of using layers and layers in Photoshop and layers in InDesign, or however you used to design your magazines or albums, those days are gone. Fundy software is by far and away the maximum software that you can, you know, minimize your time on the computer and maximize your time for what you should actually be doing, which is running your business and taking pictures.
Absolutely. I mean, and obviously I'm sure you've got the gist of it already, but those of you who may not have joined us before on any of these webinars, you know, this is just one feature. That the magazine production is one part of the Fundy suite. I mean, ultimately, it's an album design software, and it's phenomenal. When we discovered it before they were even involved with us, Mark, one of those light bulb moments, a lot like Animoto when we found their video software. He said, this is going to change our workflow, and it does. You know, it is about speed, as you said, mate. We want to be shooting and doing more more shoots, more weddings,
absolutely,
portraits, whatever.
Absolutely.
And this is an absolute game changer, and it's worth every single penny of it. So that's the hardest sell we're going to give you for it tonight. You can get, you know, as much as we've got $100 off, you can get a free trial. So if you do nothing else tonight, go to fundydesigner.com, download the free trial. The only thing that you can't do is I don't think you can export on the free trial, but just go and check it out for yourselves. Don't take our word for it. Check it out. But of course, if it is for you, then don't forget you get $100 off on that. Mate, brilliant. Look, I've got loads of questions for you, so let's hit them.
Let's do it.
Asked, you were absolutely right. What was my favourite image? The one you said, the umbrella. However, I've seen an image today that is a very, very close second.
Is it?
Yeah. That image of in the bride lying down in the pattern in the house.
Oh, the bullseye one, yeah.
Yeah, it kind of struck a chord because it reminded me of Westworld. You know, I'm a sci-fi geek, and it reminded me of the Westworld logo. But that was a great mon image. Love that, mate. I hadn't seen that one before, but it still is tipped by that bridal shot is phenomenal. I love it. But on top of that, we've got one of our experienced members online with us, Anne, and she said, Jay, which is your favourite? Because I've loved them all. So there you go.
Oh, good. Thank you very much. Very kind. Thank you.
But seriously, man, I mean, I think what's been beautiful about tonight's episode, tonight's webinar, is, I mean, I know you and I know your work, but I've seen a lot of images tonight. That before and after was a real eye-opener. So, you know,
it's really important because a lot of people will just kind of think, well, oh, it's great because he's going to all these amazing venues. Guys, I'm just like everyone else. I go to rubbish venues too sometimes. It's just making the very best out of what you think is a bad situation by looking for light. And you can make you can make magic happen if you just think about things a little bit differently.
I think this will actually, well, it's quite apt that I asked this question. I'm just gone a little bit out of sync, but just because I've spotted it in before we get to the others. So with regards to the venues, I think you touched on it. Where you can, do you visit beforehand?
I try not to, if I'm honest, because I used to. Yes, I used to. But what I found, there was a venue that I shot near me called Calling Castle. And it's down in Kent, beautiful venue. I went to do a recce, and the day we recce'd it was beautiful. I had all these great ideas in my head. And the day of the wedding, it absolutely chucked it down. And all the ideas I had went out the window, and I panicked. I think, right, now what do I do? So now generally I'll take a venue on face value because I can prepare. I can prepare and use the skill set that I've got, looking for light on the day, and say, right, this is what we got to do, and this is how we're going to make today work, rather than have all these ideas and expectations and not be able to exceed my expectations because the weather plays up. So generally, the answer to that is probably not anymore. No, I don't, Ricky.
I think there's a difference there, though. I don't think you've just touched on it. I think it's the fact that you've trained your eye, which is a good thing. Obviously, you've been doing it for a while now, and I think from my point of view, and I think that was a really valid comment though on how you got there on the day, and it was a completely different day. So I think you've got somewhere. You're all going to be different now. All of you that have joined us tonight, you're going to look at things completely different just from this hour that you've spent with Scott, because you'll be looking.
I hope so.
You'll be looking for the extraordinary out of the ordinary. You'll look 360. I mean, that was one of the first tips that, when I started working with Mark, which feels like a lifetime ago, which it probably was the first thing he said is look behind you. Don't get fixated. Look around you.
Yeah.
Don't take the first thing that's obvious. And I think, if nothing else, we should challenge you all to do that. Just when you're out and about, look for the what could be the different in the ordinary, if you like, in that. And you've proved that. Brilliant. Right, let's get into these questions, mate. So when you work, I think it's been worded wrong, but when you work through the groups, and you do need to use some kind of off-camera flash, or the question is on-camera flash or off-camera flash, I guess.
No flash at all.
Not even if the weather's against you for groups?
Not even. Again, I find a pocket of light that's consistent, and again, I expose for the shadows and lift everything else out from there. So I haven't put a flash gun on a camera for group shots in about 5 years. So generally, I'll just use off-camera. No flash whatsoever. None at all.
I mean, it's obvious, and don't get me wrong. We clearly, there from the presentation just tonight. I mean, we know that you love natural light, and so do we all.
Yeah.
And we've got a golden rule here, which I think is the same for you. It's natural light before reflector, reflector before flash, and flash.
The only time I'll put a flash gun on is generally if the cake cutting is done and it's particularly dark. I might put the flash gun on for that, but generally that's the only time it comes out of the bag. And that's under my hand on my heart. That's the only time it comes out of the bag for the cake cut.
I think it was really interesting when we were talking about, and I made a note actually to bring it up. When you're talking about the reflectors, it should be, everybody's bag. Yes, obviously the white dress is a perfect one, but I mean, for us, the Laster lights are so lightweight and collapsible, and not just that. All of any company making them now, it would be foolish not to have a medium-sized reflector.
Totally agree, and they're so cheap. They're 60, 70 quid, and just stick it in the back of your bag because you never know when you're going to need it.
Exactly, and there's no weight in them whatsoever. And then even if you haven't got an assistant, you can get a bridesmaid, an usher, or whatever it is. Somebody in the groups will help you out without a doubt. So kind of an essential, really. Right, so I've done that one. Let's just move down them. So for bride and groom, for particularly their portraits, do you have a preferred time of day, or does it depend on the timing of the wedding? I guess really.
Time of the wedding, I suppose. I mean, generally, I take them straight after they've gotten married because if you let them chat to their wedding guests, you're never going to pull them away. So generally, I've got them they come down the aisle first. They'll get a glass of champagne and say, right, guys, let's nip off now and do your pictures. This time of year, July and August, April and May, into September, I might wait and do them afterwards because the light is so beautiful. Around 6:30, 7 o'clock, I had the wedding I shot on Sunday. I actually said, guys, we're doing the group shots after dinner. I said, I respectfully, enjoy dinner, but maybe have one less glass of wine than you think because we don't need to look squiffy during the pictures. But the light was just beautiful. Again, I backlit them, beautiful golden hour, exposed for the shadows, and it looked amazing. So never be afraid to do group shots if the light is right. I mean, most photographers will get that done before the meal. Do not be afraid to try it afterwards, but maybe just pre-warn the couple to maybe go easy on the glass of red.
Excellent, love it. I thought this was a nice question, and there was a similar one that I've deleted because it was similar. Obviously, you've talked quite a bit tonight about, and you said right at the beginning about getting involved in the awards and that sort of thing. So what we probably didn't touch on, obviously, is that the specific questions of what awards we're referring to. So obviously maybe somebody who's new to the game. So obviously we know, and we've heard tonight, that you're very active with the SWPP and the WPPI. So it's these kind of things that you're obviously a member of, and obviously you're entering.
Yes, yeah, I'm a member of the association. So I'm a member of the British Institute of Professional Photography, the SWPP, and WPPI, and the Guild of Photographers as well. I'm an active member of the Guild, and I judge for all four. So I'm an active print judge now. So my time for entering competitions is coming to an end almost, where I'm now evolving into a print judge. So it's time to start giving back to the industry that I love so much. But definitely, if you want to progress, there's no better way of entering into a print comp or an online competition. The Guild SWPP do online competitions once a month. SWPP is free of charge, and you can enter there and you get feedback if you want to get feedback. And it's a really good way of learning on how to maybe improve your images for competition. But the overall thing is what a judge looks for and what a client looks for are often very differently. So don't change your style of pictures just to suit a judge, because they're not the ones paying your bills.
Yeah, agreed. And obviously, and you've mentioned tonight as well, which was interesting for me, because obviously, you were talking about which particular, we won't go into them, but which particular ones that you've won, and then in particular places where you've come second. So, and
Yeah.
my first question was, well, there's no way that should be set. And I'm not just because of my friend, and I love you,
Yeah.
but you know what I mean? The question there is, well, a minute, and we get this even with our photo critiques. It's like, you've told me that's in top 5, but or I'm just outside of the top 10, but why, isn't it? And you've just touched on it really, how we all see things quite different, even though they're all qualified judges.
Yeah.
They all see something different, and it's interesting. I know you do a lot of it. If you've never been to like a training day, a print competition training day, I know the SWPP do them, and I think the Guild do them as well. But to see the judges and what how they deliberate and how they talk about and how they dissect the images, is quite interesting to see the different points of view. So,
a shameless plug, I'm doing a 4-hour masterclass at the SWPP convention with Terry Jones in January on judging, exactly how that 4 hours on mini judging schools. So if you want to come on board, guys, it'd be great to have you on, and it really open, again, without being patronising, open your eyes up to what we're looking for and what goes into being a print judge.
It's an absolutely massive insight, really. I mean, obviously, like yourself, Mark is a qualified judge in the UK and the US, and for years, and he's very proud of that. And of course, we apply that, to the Photographer Academy and the Experience Group, and that's all we really do it with now. But when I physically came on board with him officially 10 years ago, albeit I've worked with him a lot longer than that, as much as I'm not a qualified judge, myself and Mark's wife Debbie, he took us through all the training because he wanted those extra pair of eyes, and to some extent, even with our staff in the design room and in the creative room, they've all been through that way as Mark as well, because he wants them to see what he sees. It doesn't mean we can't disagree with him. We've had the deliberations here where we've not agreed on a winning image for a competition of ours, but as long as the argument is valid, we will listen to everybody, and it's key that, so it's really important. So if you get the chance, like I said, if Scott's doing it in January at the SWBP, I would strongly recommend going and checking it out. Brilliant. So we've done that one. Excellent. And I'll do a shameless plug for the Academy. If nothing else, we do a monthly photo critique on the Photographer Academy, which you can upload a single image to each month for free. So get the judges, get Mark's feedback on your images, see where you are.
Absolutely.
And
it's the best way. The best way of learning.
If you want to join us tomorrow, there's another one tomorrow. So, but you do need to be a member, but you can just join at the basic level to get an image in. But you can watch the critiques for free if you're not a member as well. Right. Brilliant. Have I got it right? Yeah. So, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. Me and the family watched that last week. So when I saw that image today, I thought that was hilarious. It reminded me straight. Plus thinking, yeah, I want to do that shot as well. I'm not with people in it, but we all want to do that shot. But the question that came in about it, apart from it being a great shot, which it is, I'm thinking, I'm wishing that it's Kevin Costner and Morgan Freeman in the shot line, not the bride and groom.
It's not. I wish it was, but it's not.
How did you communicate with the bride and groom? I thought that was a great question.
I had walkie-talkies.
Excellent.
Walkie-talkies. I did a shot recently, that shot as well. I did a location shoot in Venice. Now, if I'm got sort of 4 or 5 bridges away, I'll put a walkie-talkie in the bride or the groom's pocket, tell them to leave it on, and I pose them through a walkie-talkie. There's a shot I did recently on Beachy Head down in Sussex. You go on my Instagram page, you'll see it on there. And again, I'm probably, maybe a quarter of a mile away, and I've got a long lens on, and I'm communicating via walkie-talkies. They're brilliant. Honestly, it's just a good way of doing things.
I'm sure it's not the case, but tell me that they're like geeky Transformer kids ones or something like that.
They're not, unfortunately. I've got them for mapping before they shut down.
So close, but yes, but I love it. Love it. Brilliant. Right. Where am I? Where am I? I've lost track now. I love working with you, mate. Let's have a go. Right. Hi, Scott. Maybe it's me. I'm an older photographer, but the images of your couples seem quite small within the photograph. Is that just part of your style or how well, that's a good question. Let's see what you say.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you look at you can still see my screen, right? You can still see my magazine.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the the shots that I showed you in the keynote, they would be what I would enter for awards. So that's my stylized portraiture. But if you're seeing the shots on the magazine, you can see that I'm filling the frame. The couples have got nice expressions. It's what I said, a couple of minutes ago. From what a judge looks for, than what a client looks for is very, very different. So you have to appeal to both and know at the right time and when to appeal to the right person. So it's in the magazine I put into a bride. They don't want to see long distance shots. I've got a couple in here because I like to shoot it. But generally, if the magazine images that I'm photographing here, you can see that so the shots here, this for example, all full frame, nice images there, nice couple portraits. Moving through here, destination engagement shoot. So again, nice signature shot there. But again, we're just using everything to our advantage, and this is how we're doing our shots on a wedding day. So yeah, it's a way of knowing exactly when you're shooting for awards and when you're shooting. So shoot for show and shoot for dough. It's the age-old term, and it's knowing when to do both.
And I think as well, which is a nice point, I think you did touch on it, but only subtly in the conversations. I know we've talked about spreads and albums and how we can increase it by shooting for that, which is brilliant. But you've also
Yes.
mentioned a couple of times about wall art as well. So these are these bigger images are the kind of ones that they're absolutely buying as well, aren't they, mate?
That's right. Yeah. So again, I use the wall art IPS within Fundy, and you can actually put a picture up on someone's wall. They can send you a picture of their living room. They measure something within that image, and it scales everything to size. So you can say, well, I think in that wall space, you ideally want a 30 by 40, not a 24 by 16. Because again, it's a way of upselling your wall art from there by using Fundy software. It's a really powerful tool. It's not just albums. You can make a lot of money from this software.
I think that was key. I mean, we touched on it earlier, and I know I've talked about it within the experience group. But getting away from this whole digital era, and we are changing businesses in their sales methods, and it's not even a hard sell. Bringing the album back, but people will automatically just worry about selling that album or that package, but they forget about the wall art. And you touched on it, even with the Robin Hood shot. You said that was a post wedding shoot, right? So,
It was, yeah.
so you're looking at your packages there, and let's face it. I mean, I know it's as part of your magazine spread, but if that was me and Mel, I'd want that on my wall.
Yeah.
That would be absolute. We would both want that on our wall because that would mean more to us than a close up of me. And I know what I look like. Mel knows what she looks like. And we're not bothered about that. But that's what we would have on our wall. Yes, we'd want it in the album, but that would be massive on our wall to remember our day. And we must remember these things. These tools are here for us to
Yeah.
design, but they're also there to make us money in that sales room. So we're really
Absolutely.
ambassadors. That right? Only a couple of questions left, mate, and we can get you to your. Oh, you can't be here because you're driving. Aha! But you
I
can
am.
get to another cold one. Let's have a look. Right. Given that your style has shown. Oh, so given your style, how many images do you normally shoot on a wedding day? Do you think?
I would say if it's just me, anywhere between 1,500 and 2,000 images per wedding day, and we get that down to about half of what we take. I double tap a lot of, obviously, for eyes and expressions. I double tap a lot on group shots.
Okay.
But typically, if I've come home and taken more than 2,000, it's been a good day or a long day.
Yeah.
But ideally, anywhere between 1,500 and 2,000 is what I would typically shoot on a wedding day. If it's me, myself, and Abs, who works for me, second shooting between the pair of us, and a couple, probably 2,000 each, and we cull it down to again about half of what we actually take that the couples get to see.
And a second part to that question: are you using a light meter or are you metering in camera?
Metering in camera. I do shoot film every now and again. I've got two Rolleiflex and a Leica, which sometimes come out on a wedding day, but not often. But generally, I meter in camera. Again, the Fujifilm in camera metering is just phenomenal. So I trust it implicitly to do what I need to do.
Fabulous. I think you just touched on this, but no, you mentioned that Abs was your second shooter. Do you take an assistant as well,
Yeah.
or do you technically ask for people to help you?
I've always taken, this time of year when kids are out finishing school, I always get inundated with emails of people want to come out and help, which is great. Typically, it's just myself that shoots. If Abs comes out, he is out as a second photographer, a second angle on the wedding day. But generally, again, I generally take I pack quite lightly, so everything I need's on me. So I have my light in my top pocket, my lenses are on a belt. I've got a hold fast money maker straps, so both cameras are on me at all times. So generally, I've got everything there. If I need help, I'll generally go and ask an usher. But the point of me having an assistant just to carry bags and reflectors are gone. So it's just me now. Yeah, it's just me on my Todd on a wedding day.
I'm not sure I'm reading this right. 2 seconds. Do you ask people
That's all right.
what far away shot they would like in the car? Oh, okay. So I think this is staying on the idea of the distance shots. We've talked about the Robin Hood shot, and then you said about the cliffs and that. Is that something that you would normally discuss pre-wedding in the conversations?
No, it's something that I will say on a post shoot. Definitely, I will pitch to the right couple. Again, I only do 2 or 3 a year, so I've got a location in mind, and I will pitch to the couple. Are you up for it? On a wedding day, I just ask the couples to trust me. And again, I'll say, if you trust me, guys, we'll make something magical happen. I have an idea in my head, and I'll be miles away, but I'll bring the walkie-talkies out, and I'll get them to do something and show them. They go, "Oh my God, that's amazing!" And it's just about having trust. And but again, the way the website and my Instagram feed is, people are expecting that type of shot. I'm showing what I want to shoot, and that's really, really important for my brand.
Brilliant. Mate, well, look, I always love it when you're online with us, but I really have loved tonight. It's easy for me to say, but I have, because I saw a lot of images that I hadn't seen before, apart from my favourite. But now I have a second favourite. So, but no, from me to you, thanks, man. I mean, obviously,
It's a pleasure, mate. Anytime.
We'll be doing more of them, I'm sure, with the affiliation that you have with Fundy, as we do on that.